the other thing I would add is that the cost of Noni Madueke is not going to be 45, 50 million, as we've heard in the last few days. It's going to be 45 million plus, if not 55 million plus, in guaranteed. An overall package will definitely have a 5, if not a 6 in it. So this idea that all in Noni Madueke 45, 50 million is disputed by Chelsea sources. Now, there may be an element of grandstanding here. Of course, Arsenal are going to say we can get it done for 50, 20 million more than the 29 million that Chelsea paid. And of course, Chelsea, like with Brentford and Mbumo, are going to have a much higher valuation. But even if they meet in the middle, that final number for Noni Madueke will begin with either a 5 or a 6 if you include the whole package. So if that's a 5 or a 6, plus, as I've reported, 90 million euros or so for Rodrigo, we know that Eberechi Eze is going to have a 5 or a 6 in his number as well. And we know that all of these strikers that Arsenal are looking at are in and around the 60 to 65 million. So I think financially, to pull off those 4, whoever the striker is, plus the 3 other names, and to make them all a squad fit would be relatively unrealistic. So let's see what direction Arsenal move in. You can never say never. Andrea Berta is ambitious. He's not afraid to find a way of making things work. But when you spell it out like that, it feels like the overall cost of adding Madueke, Rodrigo, Eze, and one of those big number 9s, and the squad fit of doing that, might lean Arsenal towards only adding one winger plus an attacking midfielder, and then, of course, trying to get that number 9 in as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Before we move on from Arsenal, the number 9 saga has intrigued people, angered people, and everything else in between. There are reports that there was a report late last night in Portugal that Arsenal had moved away from Gyökeres. There's reports today, including from Sammy McBell, that no agreement has been reached with Šeško, and they're looking at alternatives. What's your personal latest understanding of where Arsenal stand in the pursuit of their new number 9?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say, like with Rodrigo, like with Madueke, like with Eze, Šeško, Gyökeres, Watkins, all these players Arsenal are going for, Mascara, they've not gone anywhere else. So this isn't a João Pedro, Newcastle try, Chelsea get the deal done. This is Arsenal with targets, negotiating with targets, and they've not gone anywhere else. And that's why I think when you want a deal done fast, the only real urgency is if you face heavy competition. And Arsenal pre-agreed Zubimendi. Mosquera wants the move. Norgard agreed very quickly. Kepa was routine and only 5 million when there was a point when he was the world's most expensive goalkeeper. Šeško wants Arsenal. Gyökeres is open to Arsenal. And therefore, if they're taking their time, it's likely because they feel they can. And that's a crucial point. And in the search for a striker, Andrea Berta basically started the window saying, I want to do either Gyökeres or Šeško for 70 million. And unfortunately, with both, Arsenal have not been able to get the price that low. So Berta's been leveraging both against each other. And we know it all started with Šeško groundwork, but his variable release clause is now slightly over 80 million euros. And with Victor Gyökeres, this pact under Hugo Viana has in the players' eyes been reneged. And therefore, both deals have a difficult club-to-club aspect. But whichever direction Arsenal go in, if they move on either, the players are waiting. They want the move. And this is why I think Berta is driving a hard bargain and making Leipzig feel that he's going to go for Gyökeres, and making Sporting think he's going to go for Šeško, and making Villa think he might return for Ollie Watkins. And that's where we're at the moment. I don't think we'll have to wait that much longer before Berta shows his hand with a bid. But nothing has moved at this stage. Arsenal are trying to drive that number down to 70 million euros, there or thereabouts. If they can get one or both to that number, then they'll place a bid. If they get both to that number, then they'll have to decide which one they want. If they get one to that number, that's the direction of travel. And again, I'm still hearing that simultaneously he's active on Gyökeres and he's active on Šeško. And this is how Berta works. He leverages the two deals against each other. He confuses the selling clubs, makes them sweat, makes it appear like he's got another deal up his sleeve, because practically speaking, he has. And both of these players at the moment are waiting to see effectively whether Arsenal picks them. And I don't think we're going to get too much clarity until Arsenal actually move from playing games in the market to drive the price down to putting down their first offer. And that's the sort of interesting thing about these sagas, that Berta's shown he's capable of doing business quickly. He inherited Zubimendi and formalized it months really before now, probably in early May, with Norgard straight in there, deal done out of opportunism, with Mosquera, quick bid, because they know that there's value there. And let's see if they can get that one done for under 20 million euros, or if they have to meet the Valencia valuation. But with Šeško and Gyökeres, it's been a bit more of a slow burner. And I think that is down to the fact that both players will say yes if they're offered Arsenal. So this is now about Andrea Berta working out where there is value. And once he's established that, the club-to-club negotiation could be the difficult part. But each player just seems to be waiting and saying, if Arsenal say they want me and agree club-to-club, we'll join. And this is why I think Arsenal are not panicked about the situation, because until somebody else puts an actual bid down for either player, Arsenal are the ones controlling the narrative.
Yeah, but absolutely. I felt all along that Arsenal were just in this strong place because both players want them and they can keep negotiating. And the world only changes if somebody else gets involved in the deal. Similarly to, Newcastle and João Pedro. Newcastle wanting. Chelsea came in and they blew it away. You had Gittins with Chelsea. They were quite happy to wait because they had it done. But Bayern Munich really showed interest. They kind of knew, we can't sit around with Bayern Munich sniffing, because they do have the ability to turn someone's head. They got the deal done. And I think that, Liverpool, they got Wirtz done early. But most Liverpool fans I speak to that are level-headed, they're happy it's done early. But they're also smart enough to understand that had both Bayern Munich and City not been interested in him, they may have waited longer to drive that price down, because they did in that shorter process. So yeah, it does feel that way. But I think Arsenal fans are frustrated, and we report on it because we're a fan channel, so we aggregate news. And we'll report on, Simon McBell said this, and Jacobs has said that, and Fabrizio said this, and these reports in Portugal were saying the other. And there does seem to be this frustration with Arsenal fans that the news changes every day. But equally, if you follow what people like yourself and The Athletic have said, well, this is how Berta operates. And he'll accelerate something one day with Sporting, for instance, and have deep conversations and meet agents and say you're number one. So the media in certain areas picks up on that. And then the next day he seems to go to Germany and do the same thing. And it's an interesting tactic, to say the least. But viewers, look, give us your thoughts, give us your opinions on that. By
the way, Terry, as well, the thing about Liverpool that people forget is they close their financial year in May. So this PSR deadline, if you like, is only a soft deadline. And you can end your financial year earlier. You can close it slightly later. And because Liverpool, unlike most clubs, close their financial year at the end of May, they could move in June or now for all of these targets and put the outlay on the next financial year. Whereas Arsenal are closing their financial year 30th of June. And again, that's why now we're in the first few days of July, their window is going to get going, because financially they can now put these outlays on the 25-26 financial year. So Liverpool have money, a strong PSR position. They end that financial year earlier than most. And they do that to give themselves a bit of a competitive advantage, because then when the window opens in June, they're already in that new financial year. They're ready to move. They get their business done early. Arsenal prefer to have June to put into the last financial year, because then they might have an outgoing, or they might give themselves a bit more flexibility to balance the books. It's not to say that they're in any huge worry about PSR breaches or punishments, but we know from the David Raya deal and how that was structured that finances are at least a little bit tighter compared to Liverpool. So again, they take June to get all of their ducks in a row, and then July, new financial year. And now we're going to see them start moving. And I come back to what I said before. By the end of this window, I don't think Arsenal's volume of business or Arsenal's total spend will be too different to Liverpool's. It might appear like there's a gulf in what Liverpool are spending and bringing in versus Arsenal. But come the end of the window, it wouldn't surprise me if Arsenal's total spend and volume of transfers is very similar to that of Liverpool's.
I hear you there. Moving on from Arsenal.